Okay. There's no presentation. Now, let me get this straight. I am not a fan of Barry Manilow. Okay, but I thought that the Barry Manilow song, I Made It Through the Rain, was probably the most appropriate one to tell you where the real estate market is right now. How do I do this? Okay, so why do I say we've made it through the rain? Look at these statistics here. This is for all of the Mid-Peninsula real estate right now. This is for everything from Burlingame down to Redwood City. We have completely recovered and actually exceeded the last boom significantly. If you think back to when the market went down in 2008, everybody said, oh, it's going to be 10 years before we even get close to what we were during the last boom in 2007. We're actually above that. And think back to 2007. This was when anybody who could fog a mirror could get a property. They would make loans to anybody, even if they knew you could never repay that loan, they were giving you a loan. So it's amazing that we've completely recovered. Now that's for all of the Mid-Peninsula. Even the entire county has recovered fully. And if you think about the entire county, we've got East Palo Alto in there, which was hit extremely hard by the foreclosures. We have South San Francisco, Daly City, Pacifica, places like that outside of the Mid-Peninsula that saw a big decrease in their housing prices, and they've virtually recovered. Does this cut in and out as I move my head? No? Okay, all right. So that's what the county's doing. Let's talk about how this breaks down on the Mid-Peninsula. Look at single-family homes. This is just amazing. $124,000 above the last all-time high for single-family homes. It's just incredible that we have recovered that much. Now, if we look at condos, condos are close to recovering. If you saw my presentation last year at Leadership, we were somewhere around $100,000 off of the all-time high, and you see we've made up about $80,000 of that. So that's a very significant recovery even in the condo market. Has anybody tried to buy a property recently? A single-family home or a condo? Well, you probably know this, that pretty much everything is getting multiple offers. When you see the asking price, you pretty much just ignore it because it really means nothing in today's market. If you look at where the property sold last year, 105.9% of the asking price on average, just to be in the running to get that property. And let me show you what I mean. Belmont, $276,000 over the asking price. And there's the properties I'm going to show you, there's nothing special about these. These aren't mansions. Many of them are not completely remodeled, so there's nothing special about these that makes them stand out from their competition. Burlingame, $308,000 over the asking price. This one right here, I actually wrote an offer on this one. It listed at 1.289. My buyer, she was only approved at 1.35, and I said, well, I think this thing's going to go for about 1.4. Ends up at 1.6. I called her, and she's like, I cannot believe how high this went. If you looked at everything else around this area, you would say 1.4 should be the max for it, and yet somebody had been outbid so many times, they just started throwing money at it. Here's another one in Hillsborough. You kind of would expect that in Hillsborough, $425,000 over. And then the next one is in the Baywood area of San Mateo, $505,000 over the asking price. Again, if you looked at the properties around there, if I were working with you trying to buy this property, we'd look and say, oh, it's probably going to sell for about $2 million. So it goes $400,000 over that. It's almost impossible right now to predict how high you need to go to offer to get a property, because what you have to do is you look at the comps, you look at that chart that said we're going 5.9% over asking on average, and then I would say to you, if you were my buyer, I would say, how bad do you want it? Okay? This is the highest price I think it's going to go for. How bad do you want it? And you might say, well, I've been outbid 10 times now. How much? What's the highest price it's going to go for, Chris? I'm going to give $200,000 above that. That's the way that most people were getting properties in the past year. Why is that happening? If I look, I did this chart yesterday. In the city of San Mateo, as of yesterday, we had 23 single-family homes available for sale. We should have 100 on average. If you look at the history of our area in the city of San Mateo, we should have 100. And this applies pretty much all the way up and down the peninsula. So why are we seeing all those overbids? It's because all of last year, the inventory has been incredibly low, and there's a lot of money in this market, and people just want to get in. So you have low inventory, and you also have a significantly increasing buyer demand. This market is going to continue. I have a lot of people say, oh, Chris, it's just a bubble. If you look at Wall Street Journal, even the Examiner, news services like that, they're all saying, well, it's a bubble, it's going to burst. It is not going to burst, and I'll show you why. So why is the demand so high? So I'm going to go over the demand and the supply part. We have low interest rates. We have wealthy buyers fueled by technology money. I've got an article here that's actually 2 years old. It says, thanks to well-paid millionaires, San Mateo County wages are on fire. So, and this isn't just people who have some kind of equity stake in a firm. These are very high income people, a lot of times dual income couples, both working in biotech or high tech, that are buying these properties. To give you an example, I have a rental property in Burlingame right now. 2 years ago, our former tenants moved out. We got 7 applications for this thing. Every one of those couples that applied were earning an average of $500,000 a year. So here you have people that are just renting, and they're making this kind of money. So imagine what that's doing to the rental market, and then they get into the buying market. It really is pushing the market up. So international buyers also are contributing to the increase in the market. Okay, so the interest rates. This is a big part of why we have so much demand. Buyers are finally getting the fact that 4.25% is a very low rate. As a matter of fact, people have gotten a little bit scared. Last year, we were somewhere around 3.5% for a 30-year fixed mortgage. People really didn't get it at that point. Now that they've gone up to 4.25, buyers are finally saying, hey, I'm going to believe my agent now. I'm going to believe the fact that the historical average is 8.74%. I better get in because I might never see those rates again. The mortgage bank, and this is another thing that has caused buyers to believe that number there, is at the end of last year, the Mortgage Bankers Association came out and said rates are going to be somewhere around 5% this year and 5.35% by the end of next year. Everybody probably knows interest rates went down a little bit this year. So people were afraid of this, saw the rates go down. Now we're seeing even more buyers getting in saying, I better get in now because what happens if they hit 5%? What's my payment going to be like? How much house can I afford? All right, the wealthy tech buyers. I think this is a great quote. This kind of sums up our whole real estate market. A well-oiled stock offering can mint millionaires by the hundred, creating a ripple effect of wealth enjoyed by restaurateurs, gardeners, landlords, and luxury car dealers, and home sellers. I think they should have added that because home sellers have probably benefited more than any of these other people combined. Who works for the city of San Mateo? No, Marcus does. Anybody else for the city of San Mateo? So Marcus, you should be able to answer the question right here. What is this property right here?
What is it?
Do you know the story behind this property? Does anybody know the story behind this property? Andrew Bosworth, I don't know how early he was in with Facebook, but I don't know if he's a billionaire or just a multi-millionaire. He bought number 3 Greenfield Court, and that was in, I think, 2010. Then he bought number 7 Greenfield Court in 2012, applied to the city to combine the 2 lots and tear down those 2 properties. He paid like a little over $1 million for one of them, just about 1.3 for the second one. So he's into this for $2.3 million. If you look at this neighborhood, there's nothing selling for close to 2.3. Probably 1.4 would be the average for a completely remodeled home.
Chris, can you orient us? Where are we?
Okay, all right. So you have 42nd Avenue, right? So over here you've got El Camino. Here you have 42nd Avenue. Right here would be Alameda. And right off Alameda is La Casa. So you go all the way at the end of La Casa. There is Greenfield Court. I mean, it's not something that you would normally pay attention to unless you lived around there. And then, of course, over here you have Belmont. So that give you an orientation. So he buys these 2 lots, combines them, applies to the city to build a 6,000 square foot, like, I don't know, would you call that a mansion? It doesn't really look like what I envision as a mansion, but it's a 6,000 foot property in the hills. I don't know what the excavation costs are. That's on a hill. It's got a great view. That's why he bought that. But if I just look at average construction costs of $300 a square foot, that's going to cost him at least $1.8 million to buy. So $1.8 million plus 2.3, was that $3.1 million? When everything else in the neighborhood is maybe about 1.4. So if you want to ask what impact the wealth of these tech buyers is going to have on our area, imagine you live in that neighborhood. What is that going to do to your neighborhood? Hopefully you own there already because it is increasing the value. And then imagine a few of his friends say, oh man, Andrew, I think they call him Boz. Boz lives in that area. You know, I'm looking to buy a house. I just cashed out some of my Facebook or Google stock. I want to live near him. So all of a sudden that now has had a significant impact on the market. I don't have pictures of it, but you might have heard some news. I think it was in 2012. Zuckerberg's wife, I don't know whatever her name is, she fell in love with a house in the Mission District. They paid $9 million for this property when apparently it was worth about $3 million. Apparently that whole neighborhood now has risen to the $9 million mark because of a tech buyer. Now all of a sudden it's cool, everybody wants to live there. So that is what we're going to continue to see on the Mid-Peninsula. You know, Clark talked about some of these companies that are getting priced out of Palo Alto coming north. Many of the tech buyers, and I'm sure you would agree with it, the tech workers, they want to be able to take public transportation or be able to walk to work. So if their offices are in San Mateo or on the Mid-Peninsula, they want to live here too. So that's going to bring the wealth north from Palo Alto and then south from San Francisco. Okay, another reason for the demand. Silicon Valley added 33,000 new residents last year and 6,500 homes. Are we considered part of the Silicon Valley now, at least on the cusp of the Silicon Valley? But these statistics would basically apply to San Mateo County. We have an influx of people, of workers, new jobs here, and yet not enough housing because of you know, all the reasons that Clark was talking about. Does anybody know this company? Okay, what are they?
It's like the Yahoo, Google of China.
Correct. All right, Yahoo, Google, Amazon, predicted to be the largest IPO in history, maybe $100 billion. Do you know why we care? Why would I care as part of my presentation?
Because that money is being invested here in property.
That's actually, you know, that's a good point. It's something I didn't consider, but you're right, a lot of it is being invested here. And Yahoo owns 24% of them. So imagine they have an initial public offering of around $100 billion. Yahoo now sees the value of their company increase by $24 billion. Some of the investors in Yahoo decide they're going to pull their cash out. They're going to maybe buy a place to live. Maybe they buy some investment property. What do you think that's going to do to the Bay Area? It's going to push the housing prices up again, or the residential investment property prices up. 17 tech companies in the Bay Area these are companies that are slated to go public in the very near future. 17 companies valued at over $1 billion, whereas all of last year, nationwide, we only had 15 companies with valuations over $1 billion that went public. So again, what kind of an impact is that going to have when you concentrate that much wealth from San Francisco to San Jose? Here's some of those companies. I mean, I'm sure like Airbnb, I mean, that's been a hot company here recently. Dropbox, I use it every day. Clark, you mentioned GoPro. So Uber, who's ever had too much to drink and decided to better take Uber home? I do that a lot.
All the time. That's later on when we
That's,
get breath of wind.
that's the breath of wind, exactly. Okay, international buyers. Those are having a major impact. You probably know that 22 to 24% of the transactions that are occurring, at least on the Mid-Peninsula, are all cash transactions. 20% of those cash transactions are from international buyers. International buyers see the Bay Area as a golden housing market. It's I don't know who, Clark, you might have mentioned it, there's so many things to do. You've got Stanford, you've got UC Berkeley around here. Just a really cool area for international people to visit and to want to own real estate in. Chinese government's buying $5 to $6 billion worth of U.S. Property over the last couple of years, so per year. A lot of it's in the Bay Area. They're buying from New York City and the Bay Area, so that's having an impact. So you might say, well, okay, I see all that demand. What about the supply of homes? Why is there such a limited supply of homes? this is, I should have put quotation marks around this right here, but I talked to my buyers and they say, Chris, there is so much, what's your name? Kim. So Kim might say to me, Chris, there's so much competition around here, it's so hard to buy. I have buyers who are afraid of selling their current house because there's nothing else to buy. I actually I signed a listing agreement for a property on Delaware last year, I think it was November of last year. Really cool house, the people loved their house, but they said, you know what, we want our kids to have somewhere to play, we don't want to live on Delaware, it's just too busy here, and some of the trash that ends up in front of our house in the mornings, we don't want to live there anymore, we want to buy in a better neighborhood. So we signed this listing agreement, they're getting ready to go on the market. They go out for 2 weekends without me, just to go look at properties, and they call me one day and say, Chris, there's nothing to buy. We're afraid if we sell our house now, where are we going to live? We can't, sometimes you get a free rent back from a buyer, but the banks only let you do about 60 days of rent back. Beyond that, what are you going to live in the residence inn for a while? So this is locking up a lot of inventory because there's no place else to go. The other thing is, what if you're a landlord? Let's just say you're a landlord and you say, I am so tired of being called in the middle of the night to go unclog a toilet because my tenant's kid just shoved a ball down the toilet and everything overflowed. So you're tired of that, and maybe you haven't been making that much money over the years, but then you look at this and you say, wait a minute, the last 2 years, I'm making anywhere between 15 and 52% more in my rent. You look at that and you say, okay, that is enough of an incentive for maybe me to hire a property manager so I don't have to clean the toilets anymore. And then the next thing is, what if I refinance that? Now all of a sudden I've got a much lower mortgage payment, I'm getting higher rents, I've got a good income off of that rental property. To give you another example about this, I sold a property in Atherton earlier, or I guess it was earlier this year. Sold a property, these people wanted to move to Atherton to get their kids in a better school down there, and they had a house in San Mateo that they wanted to sell. They said, you know, this is too much of a financial stretch for us to keep both properties. But then I sat down and we went over the rents and I said, okay, you're going to get $4,300 a month rent for this thing, and they ended up just refinancing this thing. So now they've completely covered their costs on this property. So they looked at it and said, well, we're going to hold our property because we anticipate significant appreciation and the rents are high and we've got low interest rates. We've completely covered our costs. It's a tremendous investment for us. So that's another reason why we have such low inventory right now, because it just makes financial sense for a lot of people, especially if you're high income people, to hold on to an existing property even though you bought another one to live in. So my prediction is this market is not going to end. I think we're in for a good 10 years of significant appreciation. This is not going to be a bubble like the last market, because all the buyers right now are capable of affording the mortgages, unlike they were back in 2007. So what I would say is, whatever you can do, get into the market now, because people are going to look back 5 years from now, or 5 years from now, are going to look back and kick themselves if they didn't get into the market.
What do you think? I think it's scary.
It's
I think it's scary. My daughter is one of those folks who sold a house with multiple offers